It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Chris Whittle. Chris, I've known and been a friend of for over 25 years, and in my humble opinion, I don't know of a more influential and important entrepreneur in the education space than Chris Whittle. The number of different things he's accomplished, I'd be here for the next hour, but for sure there would be no charter school movement in the United States if it weren't for Chris Whittle and what he did at Edison. From Edison, he started Avenues, which was the first world school, to rave reviews. It was probably the most successful new private school opened anywhere in the world. And Chris took kind of the lessons from Avenues and is applying it to his next venture, which is Whittle Schools and Studio, which has the ambition to build schools in the great cities around the world, the best K-12 schools in the best cities around the world. And so, with great pleasure, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Good evening, and thank you, Michael, who sits on our board and who's seen both of the great campuses that are under construction that'll open this fall. And thank you all for being here to hear just a little bit about what we are doing. 50 years ago, I attended my first educational reform conference in Manhattan. It was actually Manhattan, Kansas, the plains of Kansas. And it was the first time that I actually had a thought of that we had yet to see the first modern school, a really next generation, comprehensively modern school. And unfortunately, I think 50 years later, that's still the case, that we've not yet seen that. But I think due to many people's work over the last decades, it's coming soon. And we hope that we will be one of the many great modern schools that are going to be appearing on the scenes in the years ahead. What I didn't know 50 years ago is that even though education stands alongside healthcare as the most significant sector in our lives, a world-class organization, enterprise, had not really grown up in the world of K-12 as well. Nothing that could stand shoulder to shoulder with an Apple or a Mercedes, or take your pick of kind of large global entities. And if you take those two things, build the first truly modern school, build the first truly world-class enterprise within this sector of K-12, that's really what all of us here at Whittle School are about, and what we've been working on for 4.5 years now, and I'll tell you a little bit about that journey. At the heart of our thinking is this slide, and it took us a long time to get it on a single page. If you look at most of the good, really good, and what might be viewed as great schools today, they tend to be single-site institutions, one campus: Andover, Exeter, Eton, Harrow, Baoyugan, Renda-Fuzhong. They tend to be single-site entities. Sometimes they spread out a bit with affiliations, but not much. We believe that a system of schools, and particularly a global system of schools, that's properly designed, properly run, and by the way, we don't think of it as a collection of schools in business terms. We don't think of it as a roll-up of schools. We think of it as built from the ground, a system of schools. In every way, it should be able to shine and outcompete a single school. Single campuses, they can be very good, but they have limitations. Their ability to attract a certain level of talent and to keep it is an example. Their ability to conduct significant research and development in a single site is hard to do. Their ability to give interesting career tracks to people within their organization. Often people have to leave in order to grow in those particular institutions. But a system of schools overcomes a lot of those particular deficiencies. It does something else as well, and that is, if you think of the students and the faculty within a global system of school, they're not learning about what it is like to lead a global life. They're doing that. They are being part of that in many different ways. Everything from our plan is that our children over their 15 years with us might spend 2 years at different campuses conducting either summer programs, semesters abroad, full years abroad, et cetera. And they can stay within, if you will, the same scope and sequence, not interrupt so many things that go on within their schools. A lot of schools actually discourage things like study abroad because it disrupts and interferes with what's going on within their particular campuses. And so a big part of a global system actually becomes a part of our overall education endeavor as well. Our faculty members in a similar way might say, we'll do 5 years here, we'll do 5 years there, and they can actually move around in a way and yet never leave their organization and have to take the risks that sometimes come along with that. A second, and I would say this is not so much within our educational vision, but it impacts our overall business plan significantly, is this chart. We have mapped around the world supply and demand. And this is a fact that is true in every great city of the world. A good school is full. A very good school is impossible to get into. A great school, people do crazy things, which we've witnessed in the United States recently as examples. And that is true in every city of the world. In Hong Kong, families buy $1 million US debentures just to get second interviews at top schools in Hong Kong. I have seen investment bankers wait in the rain to get applications to a kindergarten that is highly regarded in New York. I've seen executives leave meetings to get their children's names on lists 5 years in advance in London for particular schools that they care about. And that's true everywhere around the world. And what you have to do is build a great school, and if you have a great school, you will have a tsunami of demand because everywhere parents are looking for that. How do we think of it? First of all, and I've been making a mistake, we don't call our schools schools. We call them campuses because we think of it as one school with many campuses around the world. And how do we think of an individual campus? Quite different than old school used to think of it. Old school, for the most part, the great old schools of the world are either day schools or boarding schools. Some of them have a small mix. We think of it in the following way. The 3 top boxes for full-time students at our school, they can do that in one of 3 ways. They can be a day student, they can be a weekly boarder coming on Monday, going home on Fridays, something that's particularly well known to parents in Asia, less so in the United States. And then we will have dormitories for full boarders at every site that we do worldwide. Secondly, below the box is three other services that we provide, and you might note we say Whittle School and Studios. Studios means everything that's not part of kind of 8 to 4, but is after school, before school, evenings, weekends, and summers. But we think of all of that as part of our offering. And one of the things that it helps us do is another part of our educational mission is Studios helps us personalize and individualize our educational offerings in many ways. I was in Shanghai last week, and I visited a brand new 1 million square foot, just finishing construction, educational mall done by a Pritzker Award winning architect. The entire 1 million square feet is for educational services for after school, evenings, and weekends. 1 million square feet is a pretty sizable mall that is just dedicated to educational services. And that in many ways is what we mean by Studios. Our typical campus is 15 grades, age 3 to age 18. We typically will have about 2,500 students on a campus, about 120 to 150 students per grade. A typical campus, depends on the city, ranges from 500,000 square feet of constructed space to 1 million square feet. And we'll show you some pictures of what we're building as we go through. To do what we're doing requires many different core competencies, and I won't run through all of these, but you would guess many of them. At the heart of it, obviously, is we have to have a terrific educational team, but it has to be supported by many business team members that are doing a variety of different aspects of what we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about our team because it says a good bit about what we're doing, and I'll introduce a couple of them that are here with us today. Ian Thomas, second person from the top. Ian Thomas, we come from three worlds, and this will help you understand us. First, we come from the world of education, which is great independent schools, great public schools, and great universities and colleges. And we're from all of those sectors on the education side of what we do. Then we come from global enterprises, companies that have operated across borders at scale and understand complex systems and how to build them. And then third, we come out of the reform world. Myself being an example, many of us have done many years in the trenches of education reform in the United States and elsewhere. Examples of all of those three categories I will mention. Ian Thomas was the CEO of Boeing in China, in Australia, and in India at different parts of his career, and has seen the kind of world-class organization that we're trying to build, and seen it in many different cultures, and he did his PhD at Cambridge. Nick Dirks is actually with us today and is speaking a couple of times tomorrow, I believe. Nick heads all of the educational functions of our endeavor and others on top of that, and is the vice chairman here. For the past few years, he was chancellor at Berkeley, the University of California, Berkeley, and for a decade before that was dean of the faculty at Columbia and executive vice president there. He's also one of America's great scholars on India, has lived there, speaks one of the languages of there, and has been terrific in kind of engineering our path into India, and we'll speak a little bit about that as we go along. Good to see you here, Nick. Other people that, and I can't see in the bright lights, but other examples from different sectors. Jim Hawkins headed Harrow in London for the past decades. He's what we don't really call him this, but we call him head of heads. And so all of our heads of school report into Jim. Rebecca Upham headed the largest independent school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, BB&N. She's running all of our educational design and has a team of many different players that are involved. Li Jing was in the leadership team of the most famous private school in China and also the most famous public school that I mentioned formerly, Rindao Fuzhong in Beijing and Baoyugan in Shanghai. And she runs our global enrollment activities. Morgan Silver Greenberg comes from the world of marketing and innovation and is our chief of product design and has visited probably 50 schools he says more, around the world. We are thieves and are looking for good ideas. And by the way, plan to reciprocate in many ways and provide all the ideas that we come up with to those that are interested. And then Jules Coleman was one of our very early players. He led NYU into Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, and if there is a global school, NYU would qualify at higher ed as one of the leading institutions in that regard. Good to see you here, Jules. A little bit about our history. We were founded 4.5 years ago. We secured the sites for our first 2 campuses in Washington and Shenzhen about 3 years ago. We launched basically the idea or the brand about 1.5 years ago in launch events in Beijing and Washington and Shenzhen and New York. And then we will open our first 2 campuses 150 days from now in Washington and in Shenzhen. We have completed 3 different, many of you may be related to finance. We've created or completed 3 different rounds of finance, Series A, Series B, and just about 3 months ago, the first closing of our Series C. And we've been very fortunate in one way or another, either via the real estate that's deployed or into what we call our operating company. About $700 million is backing this idea, so we're fortunate in that regard. We're working in about a dozen additional cities. I won't run through them. Our biggest 3 countries, because essentially, at least for our first decade, we are a large city endeavor. And the 3 countries with the largest cities, our number 1 market will be China, where we expect to have 10 or 12 campuses throughout China. America will be number 2, where we'll have about 5. And India will be very close and could actually surpass America in terms of number of campuses. And we're already working in 4 different cities there on campuses as we speak. One other thing we've done is not just capital matters, but where your capital comes from matters. And we have worked hard to have a global capital base and have substantial investors from both the United States and China. In our coming rounds of capital in Series D, we plan to diversify our capital base into India, into the Middle East, and hopefully Europe as well. But we think that's important as we go down the road. I'll end with just some photos of what we're doing, and then happy to take a few questions, and I'll even quarterback them to members of our team. This is our campus in Shenzhen. We're doing 2 phases. The first phase is about 600,000 feet. Second phase is about 400 1,000 feet. This will be handed over to us, and this is just a different view. This will be handed over to us in about 60 days, and we're very excited to see it in its finished form. This is our campus in Washington, D.C. Some of us were chatting earlier. This is the old Intelsat headquarters in Washington. Sits about equidistance from the center of the district and Bethesda. And it's 1 million square feet of very interesting building that we are rehabbing into a campus as we speak. And it sits on about 14 acres right beside a group of embassies. We normally do not announce campuses that we haven't finished all of the paperwork for, but in New York City, the press tends to get ahead of us, and so this was actually announced for us about 2 weeks ago. This will be our first campus in New York. By the way, we plan 2, one in Brooklyn and one in Manhattan. This is the one that we're finishing documents with Tishman Speyer, the developer of. This is a 600,000 square foot space that sits over the old Macy's in downtown Brooklyn. It's both the Brown Building and the Silver Tower next to it, and we're really excited about this, and this will open in 2020. And because we haven't announced this, I'm going to do it quickly, but this piece of dirt somewhere in Delhi, and that's all you get to see, okay, is under development as well, and we hope to open there in 2020 as well. That's a quick sketch of what we're doing. I just hit the tops of the waves on many things, and happy to take questions, and I may call on colleagues to help out. Yes?
How do you compare your model to GEMS? Would they just be separate schools rather than campuses?
The question, if you did not hear it, was how do we compare our model to GEMS? And as probably everyone knows, GEMS, one of the largest schooling organizations on the globe, headquartered in Dubai, and we've known them for a long time and admire their work. Different models. GEMS has a wide array of different schools, and they have them at many different price points, as high as what we are doing, and down to $1,000 per year schools. And they also have multiple curriculum offerings at their different sites, where they may offer A-levels at one and American type curriculum at another. So I would say their offering is much more diversified than what we are planning. We are planning one brand, one global curriculum with modifications within the cities that we're in. And our price point will vary by city, but not much, meaning within a relatively tight range. And so, yes? I think you said, is it why did we choose Shenzhen? In terms of when we open a city, we already know what are likely to be our first 30 cities in our first decade. What we don't know is which one will come first, and that is driven really by opportunities of real estate. And so sometimes opportunities are presented to us that we have a general idea of what cities will go first, but we change that around as real estate situations propose themselves to us. Shenzhen was always in our leading 3 or 4 cities. It is the city that symbolizes the new China, and Deng Xiaoping made sure of that, and it's gone from a fishing village in Xikou to a 20 million person city in 25 years. And so it's a great place. It's probably the best place for us to begin because it signifies innovation in China. And so we're thrilled to be welcomed there. Yes?
I walked in a little late, so I apologize if you talked about, or actually if you already explained this, then I'll Google you and we don't have to talk about it. But you talked about a global curriculum. What is that global curriculum value?
Oh, it's a good question. At the heart of it, and I think this, in some ways, has been informed by my almost 15 years of experience in the charter school movement. But at the very heart of it is that a belief that virtually all children can do interesting and very good work, and that it's a school's responsibility to help them do that and find what their particular angle of attack, if you will, might be. And so personalization, which is grounded in the value and the belief that that all children have a road to kind of their greatness. Personalization is a big part of what we are about. And if you were to go, well, what will you see in one of our campuses that will be an indicator of that? We plan to have the best advising system on the globe. And we have looked worldwide, and we only found one school around the world that we thought came close to having the kind of advising system, and we hired the head of that school to come be part of this. And by the way, that school is called Wickham Abbey, and in the UK, I think it just posted the highest A-level scores of any school in the country, and so it's a great school. But what we liked is it had a one-on-one advising system that was built right into the kind of spine of the school. And so you're going to see children spending one-on-one time with advisors at a frequency and level that you just don't see anywhere else. Yes?
Thank you very much. I have a question to talk about you have global curriculum that has local adaptations across different campuses. Can you comment on what exactly, how do you do that? And given that different countries have different regulations, for instance, in China, actually curriculum is highly controlled by the government. Unless your school is only open for foreign passport holder, which I'm not quite sure. Are you planning to open like a international school for Chinese citizens as well?
Yeah.
If that, how do you do the kind of global adaptations for global curriculum? And how do you ensure the teaching quality is there? Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the past 8 years, I've spent about half my time in China, and I'm there every month, and was there last night, and and in an attempt to really understand both the culture and the educational landscape, if you will. In China, we will operate not under expat school licenses that are licenses that really are serving expats. We are operating under private Chinese school licenses that it can accept PRC citizens into our school. As you know, what comes with that is that you must comply with the national curriculum standards of the country. By the way, a lot of people think that's unique to China. It isn't. There are laws all over the world that we have to understand and comply with. We have teams led by people out of Zhejiang, out of Chenhua, out of Fudan, out of Baoyugan, out of Renda Fuzhong, that are working on how we do that, and how do we take a progressive global educational program and make it work within the compliance of those particular set of laws. Interestingly, we're not saying that's easy, but it is not something that we feel like we're making terrible compromises on. And in fact, quite the reverse, in learning the national curriculum of China, we've adopted many of their principles and are using them worldwide. So we see it as something, not so much that we're complying with, but something that we're actually learning from, and it's contributing greatly to our growth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, two questions. One is at the pre-college level, you're going to be using something like IB or AP, or you're going to be using your own. The second question is what percentage of your student body will have scholarship?
What was the second part of your question?
What percentage of the student body will have scholarship?
I still didn't.
What percentage will be scholarships?
Okay, thank you. First, we're not an IB or an A-levels, or if you look at some of the finest schools in the world, they develop their programs from scratch, and Andover's, Exeter's would be good examples of that. We have looked worldwide at terrific curriculum and programs and view ourselves as kind of systems integrators of best practices from all over the world. So it is a program that we have designed. Our students will have to take various kinds of entrance exams for universities that they will go to. Getting back to your question, if a student thinks they're going to be taking Gaokao and going to a Chinese university, we probably wouldn't be their best choice today. Over time, that might change, and we'll see how that progresses. Regarding scholarship, about 15% of our children will be on some level of aid, from quarter ride to full ride scholarships. And on a typical campus, that's about 300 students that would be on financial aid. Yes?
We've talked to some of your team working on the DC campus, and it's just been amazing learning what they're doing. But there's been some talk about how what you learn through these schools will be spread back into the community in a more mainstream education. And I'm wondering what the vision of how you will do that will be.
Yeah. For those of you who didn't hear the question, how are we going to give back to all the schools and to all the countries that actually helped us along the way in designing what we're doing? And we view social responsibility as multifaceted. One is scholarships, which is what you see at most schools, but we view if you will, the spread of IP and discoveries as being an important part of what we're going to be doing. Nick Dirks, one of the things that's in his mandate is the creation of a foundation that will actually help do that. But we're already starting it. You were speaking about the Nanshan district. We have a very good relationship with Nanshan and are sharing ideas both ways. We just did, for 800 people, a conference on brain science in Shenzhen, and we organized that and put the entire thing together. So we see those kinds of things as being an important part of what we do. Yes?
First of all, thank you so much. My jaw was on the floor the whole time. This is quite incredible, and thank you for taking it on.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
So I'm curious about two things. Well, a lot of things, but two things. As a parent, how do I qualify? How do I know if I qualify? Is there a certain demographic that you're initially targeting, within wealth or location, things like that? And then the second thing is, suppose that as a parent I travel quite a bit in business, and so I really value global citizenship for my kids, if I have kids. Then what are my options if, because it's a global campus, so what are my options given that keep my kid here for a week and then bring them
Got it.
here? What's that?
Okay. The questions, for those that didn't hear it, one is, how do we admit families is really the one question. And then the second is, what are the rights of those families regarding, or the benefits regarding moving around the system. Our admission policy is not too different than, in some respects, than what you would see at other fine schools. We interview families, we interview children, we do a series of assessments, we look at former educational performance, and we try to build a portfolio. And what we're really looking for is, do we think the family really cares about what we're trying to do? And secondly, do we think a student can actually do the work that's going to be at our campus? And so we go through that process. We started admissions 13 months ago, and we have a team of about 40 people worldwide that are and we're doing admissions worldwide. We've done parent events in Moscow, in Ho Chi Minh City, in Seoul, all across the world. We have just under 3,000 applications already, and those are growing by the day. And so we look at it as a global application pool. In terms of a family moving, you are not admitted to the campus, you're admitted to the system. And so if you move from Sao Paulo, Brazil to London, we go out of our way to make sure that you can easily do that, because that's a great benefit of being with us. Yes?
Two questions related to two of your comments. One was you sponsored a research conference recently in Shanghai. The second is the core belief that kids are wired to do great things and you just have to steer them and support them to achieve it. To what extent are your educators versed in the science of learning? And to what extent are students taught scientific principles of learning so they can become self-directed and sophisticated learners while in your schools?
The question was, I had mentioned that we did a conference on the science of learning. To what extent are our educators briefed and up the curve on that was the first question. And it reminds me of something I wanted to mention. We have already recruited the 200 faculty members that will be with us this fall. And we've been working on that for a year and a half. All of those faculty members go through two onboarding activities. The first is globally, and in the middle of July in Bergenstock, Switzerland, the faculty of both Shenzhen and Washington will come together for a global onboarding, and we'll do that every year with all new faculty members. And that is to get everybody introduced to what the global system is about. Then we do about 4 weeks of onboarding at each campus level, and that's the more technical aspect of our professional development for our faculty members. And the science of learning is not so much part of the first week, but it's very much part of the other 4 weeks. I'm not qualified because I'm not an educator, but if I brought Nick up here, he would be. And you want to say something? He's being shy. I have 38 seconds. It's been our pleasure. Thank you all for taking the time, and I'm happy to be here.